Yes, sir.
Our guest today is the president of the Conservative Caucus, Jim Pfaff. Let's bring him up here. How you doing today, Jim?
I'm doing well, guys. How are you doing? By the way, I'm watching your intro and I'm getting just a little bit of Longmire vibes. And I'm thinking to myself, remember the asymptote. Did y'all watch Longmire? Did anyone ever watch the Longmire series?
Maybe. I don't know.
I've seen bits and pieces of it, but I haven't actually sat down and watched the whole thing. I've heard great things about it, though. So
they said they would tell one another because the guy who owned the bar was the Indian and Longmire's the cowboy. And they always said, remember the asymptote. We always get really close, but we never meet. That's what an asymptote is. But I feel that way about government every once in a while, by the way. And you guys were talking about we got to hold even the Trump administration accountable to these things. I've been working politics for 30 years, and I always remember the asymptote. So far sometimes.
Right.
But I have a little bit more hope in this situation. I think we're getting in the right direction.
Hey, so Jim, you've done a little bit of an intro, but would you like to explain to our audience who the Conservative Caucus is and what they do and what their mission is?
So it was founded in 1974. We're actually the nation's oldest conservative grassroots organization. Howard Phillips was our founder. He was part of that fundamental Goldwater/Reagan conservative movement from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But what we do is we build out grassroots effort across the country. We are building out state by state and by congressional district because we do get involved in independent expenditure work in campaign time. So last year we spent about $8 million on pro-Trump independent expenditures. In 2026, I hope to be able to spend 2, 3 or more million and then find some key races that we can get into, activate a grassroots network to register people to vote. But then the other thing we do is we are you would say, nonprofit lobbying organization. We're a 501c4, and we do work hard to push Congress to take action. So we're very pro-DOGE efforts that we're putting together right now. We'll do others as necessary. The immigration thing is in hand right now, but if we need to speak out on that. So we are a MAGA organization. We are pro Donald Trump. We believe in the MAGA agenda. You might find this or that ticky-tack little thing that opposed the CARES Act, Donald Trump in his first administration. There are things that can come up. But the reality is we need Donald Trump to be effective these 4 years. Absolutely. It's going to save America if he can do what he wants to do. And we're out there to stand with the president and stand with this agenda in every way we can. The next 4 years and the years after.
Absolutely. And we kind of able to see the differences between Trump's first presidency and the second one. And Farm remembers we lost the chamber in 2018. So it's up to us to make sure it doesn't happen again, because after that happened, there was only so much President Trump could do at the time. When did you take over as president of the Conservative Caucus?
In February of last year. My history in politics, constitutional politics, goes back to the 1990s. I was running a grassroots economic organization that ran state legislative campaigns. We were able to grow free market majorities in the Indiana legislature for a time. I ran a gubernatorial campaign. I worked at Focus on the Family for a few years in their public policy department, advancing their family policy council network. And then I spent about 8 years on Capitol Hill as chief of staff for both Camp from Kansas and Thomas Massie from Kentucky. I was his chief of staff for a couple of years. So I go on that strong pro-free market, Austrian economics approach to government, pro-family, pro-life. This is the kind of stuff I've been doing for all this time.
For sure.
Do you think, I have a little question about Thomas Massie, because I know that there was a little bit of a spat recently passing the most recent spending bill, Thomas Massie and Trump. So how are you guys handling that?
Well, so I disagreed with Thomas on this particular one. I was supporting this continuing resolution, by the way, like this, because I hate continuing resolutions.
Right.
Listen, we need 250 Thomas Massies and Chip Roys and Jim Jordans Congress. The weakness of the Trump agenda is Republicans in Congress, by and large. We've got a large group of them. Now, fortunately, so far, they've been standing together. So I'm very pleased with that, both with the nominations and so far with the main agenda items that have needed to go across the floor, both houses. So, but I diverged a little bit with Thomas on this one. Listen, just with all due respect to everyone that got all upset with him, I do not believe you need to get rid of Thomas Massie. You are going to have a RINO. In fact, Thomas replaced a radical RINO when he got elected in 2012 the first time. It was a big step up. And so when we have these mild disagreements, it needs to be with people who are fundamentally constitutionalists and believe in the American dream. Thomas fits that bill very well. But we want to avoid is this larger core of people that was my frustration for 8 years on Capitol Hill, which is the appropriators, what we call the Cardinals. Folks love to spend money. A lot of the problems we're in right now, it's mostly a Democrat problem, but do not be fooled. It's also a Republican Party. You know, MAGA agenda is a breaking away from this uniparty agenda, which just constantly grew government, and it just depended on what English you put on the ball, you know, Republicans or Democrats, and what we're shooting for. So that's my general take on that.
Absolutely. I think so. Okay, hear me out. I can respect Democrats because they tell you who they are. They not shift from anything. But the problem we have within the Republican Party are these RINOs. These guys that will get elected, and then we'll have people like Crenshaw or Cornyn that will want to vote to send all this money to Ukraine. And they all Democrats whenever they fit. So we have a gigantic RINO problem within the Republican Party. So hopefully we can change that soon.
Well, and that's what in part is going to be about. Now we want to expand majorities. There's going to be a real opportunity to have a supermajority in the Senate. I'm not predicting it yet, but there's enough activity out there that we could actually do that and have Republicans. Listen, net Republicans in leadership with Donald Trump as president is net better than obviously having Democrats in there. But that's if you have the leadership of a Donald Trump. On their own, they won't do well. But that's one of the things that we've got in play. But this is the real problem. Listen, what has inspired Americans to overwhelmingly make Donald Trump president again is that he believes in the Constitution. And I know that there's a lot of quibbling on the edges of that particularly in there. But he believes in the Constitution. He believes in America, the concept of what America really is. Democrats, they want nothing to do with that. But as you say, the core of our problem is RINO Republicans that have to be kept in line because they believe in Washington, D.C. as much as the Democrats, not in the same evil ways, but in evil way that we're now almost $37 trillion in debt.
Absolutely. So you started with a Conservative Caucus on election year.
Yep.
How has the mission Conservative Caucus changed? Is it more? Are we starting to move and look forward towards midterms, or are we expanding on education? What are some different things that caucus is doing?
Well, three main things. We are looking towards 2026. We're getting our ground together in preparation for that. A second effort is doing things like voter registration and finding out minded voters are so that we can inform them what's going on. We also are undertaking an election integrity effort, not as broad-based as some organizations, but one of the things that we want to do and are working on right now is, frankly, just cleaning up the voter rates by using what's called an NCOA, a national change of the post office puts every change of address about every week or maybe a little quicker than that. And anybody that has done direct mail or worked with a large list knows that you try to clean up the addresses and you use that official post office list.
Yeah.
When we do that, these state voter registration rolls and we come back to the Secretary of State or whoever the authority in that state is, and we say, these people are not valid anymore, and that needs to be cleaned up. Now, you have a big legal battle, and we want to take that legal battle on, but we know in a lot of states, we can quickly move a process to try to get that cleaned up. So we're going to undertake that as best we can. So election integrity is another area. And then again, we're trying to be in the media, talking about everything that's going on so that we can support the Trump agenda. The Doge effort needs a lot of light put on it. Like it's one thing gotten the information that we've gotten so far, and it's substantial and compelling and very important, but we got to keep talking about that message. We need to keep rolling that out and let people know why it's important.
Absolutely.
In support of what Elon Musk and Donald Trump are doing there, and then the other MAGA efforts that that Donald Trump is attempting.
Before we move about election integrity, because I live in Washington State, and it's a mess over here. Not only are the voter rolls completely out of hand, but we also have universal mail ballots. Is there any kind of movement that you're pushing for universal, and having that from the top, from someone like Trump, who's saying, okay, the state elections, voter ID, because that's the only way that I really see. I mean, I could get laws that they're trying to pass here in Washington State and the amendment to the Constitution that is completely insane. And the majority of people here do not have a say in, because they're just the Democrats have had a majority for decades now, and we don't get any voice in it, because I personally believe that the universal mail-in ballots tilt everything towards Democrats, and so they continue to win. But the only reason that I've stayed in this state for so long is because I believe that the conservatives are a majority, but if we are able to clean up the election integrity, then we actually stand a chance. Yeah. Is there any kind of a movement that you know of that is that and states that don't want to participate in something like that participate in?
And by the way, you're totally correct about Washington. Briefly lived in Washington in a company I ran for a couple of years. I was in Bellevue, a place down in Kent, Washington, is where we're running it. Listen, you go over Snoqualmie Pass, and that is red, bright red everywhere, except for a precincts in Spokane, right? I mean, it is totally all red. By the way, up the mountain range too, you've got a lot of red up around there. It's really Seattle that kills the state. But I do agree with you. Listen, the voter laws are a problem in states like Washington and Oregon, maybe less so California, although we see evidences that that's changing. There are a whole bunch of Democrats in the major cities there. But when you go to Oregon and Washington, that is a real problem. What I have been talking, some are discussing, is how can Congress approach getting rid of mail ballots? Now, just a little quick primer here. There are two kinds of mail ballots. There are unsolicited mail ballots and there are absentee ballots. We're never going to, I don't believe, constitutionally be able to get rid of absentee ballots, but what states need to do with those is go back to pretty firm restrictions with a signed affidavit under penalty of law. So in other words, if you're an invalid and you're staying in a nursing home or you're staying in the hospital for some reason, or if you're honestly due to business purposes traveling, you ought to be able to register your vote. If you're overseas in the military, you ought to be able to vote absentee. That stuff we don't need to get rid of. I mean, there are a few we can do to clean up the process, but we're never going to be able to get rid of. But I'm convinced that we could constitutionally get rid of universal mail-in ballots that are unsolicited.
Correct.
Because what is the trigger for the constitutionality of the vote, and also the constitutionality of the primacy of the states to be able to determine how their elections are run? What is the key factor is the voter. But what those mail-in ballots are is the state stating can send these ballots out to anybody we want to. Well, if it's not solicited, in my opinion, legally, you've taken away the voter connection to that. So I think I think that Congress, I believe, could pass a law to eliminate unsolicited mail ballots. That would go a long way. And you're absolutely correct. That is a factor that allowed Democrats to, and I'm going to use air quotes here, steal elections. I mean, there are a lot of, I know we're not going to go on this here, don't have the time, but there are a lot of stealing election things we could discuss 2020 anytime there, but that sort of thing, mostly on a small basis, has always sort of been there. There are elections happen on local areas a lot, mostly local races. But what this is a problem with, and why I would use air quotes saying steal elections, is down in California, you can gather votes for any reason for all. I think theirs is a 45 or 50 day voting process. And so someone can go up to a door, ask a person if they receive their ballot, and gather up their ballot for them. Well, what does that allow? First of all, there's a major chain of custody issue. You
Correct.
cannot verify if that person, a group on a large basis, are going around encouraging to vote a certain way. They're actually electioneering at the door. There's no way to validate whether that's the case or not. And that is a big problem. People who have voted for many years now, maybe the last 2 decades, you know that if you go to your local polling place, there can be no electioneering inside the voting area. But when these vote gathering methods, you're allowing
ballot
electioneering
harvesting,
in the voting. So that needs to also go away. But that's the way that these unsolicited mail ballots can work, because someone who had no intention of voting could have someone walk up to their door and be encouraged to vote, not just to register their vote, but encouraged to vote a certain way, because that's the only person they're going to talk to before they make the vote. That is a problem. That also needs to be eliminated. I believe that could be eliminated by Congress too. And then you leave the rest of it still with problems, but you've taken out 2 major things that are a problem with our elections. And then if we can clean up the voter rolls and states are require themselves to do an NCOA, check the address on everyone, that's another mail ballot problem. It can go to another state and then come in and vote in your state. Lots of issues here, but those 2 things, unsolicited mail ballots and vote gathering, I think are not necessarily constitutional and should be challenged and changed. And I think Congress ought to take a look at maybe trying to do something about it.
I do have a question with some maybe moderate Democrats or, on the be a little aggressive. So with doing something like that, do you think it would kind of sway some of the people in the Maha movement have kind of brought to our side and push them away?
In what way?
No, just say because some people kind of think, because conservatives speak about voting and the legality and
they want the sovereignty of to remain sovereign.
Yeah.
And the problem I have with this, and I have a lot of minded followers that every time I bring this, they're like, well, the government's overstepping their bounds if they're, federally mandating how the states are elections, and it really like, well, then we're just completely screwed here. In Washington State, there's no way to win. I see zero pathway to win. And we're supposed to have voice. We're supposed to be a republic, not a democracy. Not the fact that this tiny majority that they claim they have, because they have more people in states, can just overrun all of our rights and just trample over the Constitution in way, shape, or form without us even having a whimper legally behind it. And they're the obviously proven easiest way to cheat is universal mail-in ballots and signing up people to register to be voters when you get a driver's license, which, by the way, you can get a driver's license if you're an illegal, as long as they have a social security number, which we found out that they don't even keep track of social security numbers at all. You can reuse the same social security numbers many times over, and they don't check it. They don't care. So the fact that so many people are being automatically registered to vote, and then mail-in ballots are just being sent out randomly, like, I still get a mail-in for the lady that used to live in my house, and we moved in here in 2019. And I got a ballot who died in 2006. The voter rolls are not clean here. And so there's no way for me to actually trust that the system is legit here. And of course, Washington State passed laws last year or the year before. Even with Freedom of Act, we're not allowed to know the chain of custody. We're not allowed to know anything about elections. It's just trust me, bro. That's how I run it here. It's
a big to address this libertarian argument that you brought. And I come from a libertarian mindset. I've called myself a Christian libertarian for many, many years. I think that the idea of liberty Constitution is the concept of liberty that we need. But to make the argument that, we can't have our elections run by the federal government. By the way, we do have them in part run by the federal government already. I mean, since the Civil Rights Act, every southern state, mostly in the southeast portion of the country, their election rules had to be submitted to the Department of Justice annually. Any changes that they wanted to make had to be approved by the Department of Justice. So we were already running elections out of Washington, D.C. under that auspices. And we can argue as to whether we needed to do that or not. And there were certainly some massive problems, similar to ones we're complaining about, that were happening prior to 1964 against black folks in the South. So that's an issue. There's another way that we run elections from the federal government. It's called UOCAVA. Essentially the motor voter laws, and then the UOCAVA laws add to that some new guidelines related to military people across, around the world. And this is a rule that Washington, D.C. put out that now requires voter registration to take place in your license branch, for example. That began with a federal. There are ways that the federal does meddle in our elections as it is. So we can't ever forget that these exist. What we need, though, is, and the things that I think Congress can do similarly, but for more righteous effect, is to require voter ID with citizenship voter ID that requires birth certificate to prove citizenship, et cetera, not just that. Then we need to get rid of unsolicited mail ballots, and we need to outlaw vote gathering. None of those there's no necessity to not be required. It is an absolute necessity, and there's no need for vote gathering or for mail-in ballots. And then eventually, what I want to do, and this may be hurdle to get to, but I'd prefer to have same-day voting. Get back to same-day voting. Those things are fundamental to a free society, in my opinion.
Yeah, we see all these countries able to count all these votes for presidential elections. I think it was in South America. They did it within 12 hours, I believe. So it can be accomplished with all 50 states. I 100% agree with that. Yeah. I kind of want to talk to Z.
Okay.
Because I noticed this last election, there was a huge Gen Z presence online, social media like TikToks and on. What's the plan for Conservative Caucus, guys? Or are you guys trying to focus in on Gen Z and eventually for the future? Because I mean, we have to get that up for success.
Staff, the 6 of them for one, are all Gen Zers. Well, I guess if you add me, I'm not a Gen Zer, I'm a Gen Xer. But we totally focus on really that. I mean, that is where we're at. So if you look at American Conservative Union that puts on CPAC, that's all baby boomers and early Gen Xers, right? Then you go the other side of the spectrum. You go to Young Americans for Liberty. That's all younger than Gen Zers, right? It's millennials, millennials. Yeah. So, but the Gen Z area is what we're focused on. I mean, not that we won't be involved in age groups, but that is the focus of where we're trying to go because it is the future. So for 2 reasons. First of all, right now, they are the folks in the key time of their breadwinning, when they're building their careers, growing their families. They have the most at stake for what's happening right now. The baby boomers, they don't have huge stake in what's happening right now, except for what comes into their personal interest. But Gen Zers are in a situation where what's happening to them right now must be done right, because as they get into the next 10, 20 years of their lives, it'll still have a huge effect. Whereas someone 70 years old, 20 years, likely going to have passed away, or they're just not part of it. And then the youngest generation needs to be trained and brought up by that Gen Z component. And that they're the moms and dads of those kids. So Gen Z is where it's at, in my opinion. And we're totally focused on that, both in our voter registration efforts, in the way that we communicate with people in social media and so forth, where we communicate in social media as well as what we communicate. So yeah, absolutely. I'm in agreement with you. It's most important.
Steve, keep making those TikToks, man.
Oh man. I posted a TikTok today and got 2 back-to-back anti-bullying protection notices. like, man, I'm doing something right. I'm over the target.
Yeah, you are on top of the target. Yeah, it's crazy.
Mine are even long, maybe 15 to 30 seconds at most, and I just bring up something, and I don't know, it triggers people. But
well,
yeah, social media.
One great add to yours is Nick Freitas, a Virginia legislator. He's got fantastic shorts that are very Gen Z oriented. He's in the middle of raising his family as well too. That kind of content is really important. Gets to that generation. I think it's critical.
From a millennial, me.
Correct.
So it's kind of tough to see as far as my analytics go on X. You can see I have a tough, and I'm not sure why, but the majority of my audience is 35 and older. I mean, there's a huge increase there. I've been trying to rack a little bit and figure out just how to reach these younger kids. And it's weird saying that because I don't feel old. I'm 33, and trying to now redirect, maybe appealing somehow to younger generation, and show them exactly. As I'm concerned, to build their life is to get married and have kids. But it seems like a lot of them like that, or at least they're not interested in it much yet. But that's what I'm working on. So I'm a little bit behind appealing to the entire Z crowd, but I'm putting it all on you. It's in your court. You TikTok, and you got to get millions of followers on there. So way you can really affect Gen Z. As far as I know, that's where they all hang out.
Yeah, I'll try. I mean, I had about 3,000 followers already. So,
but one thing to keep in mind though too is most Gen Zers are in the middle of raising families, so they're really getting in that busy time of life. But if you've got preteens, that's a lot of heavy work. It takes a lot of time, husband and wife. So that's a challenge. There, of course, are a lot of single people that aren't having kids in that range as well too. But keep in mind what I think we're trying to do is also, as we're building out our state organizations and we're finding leadership in those states, we want to develop leaders that are in the Gen Z crowd, because that's another aspect of it too. So I know I don't look as I, other than the gray on my beard. And by the way, I do not color my hair. I just want to make this very clear. It just has not gone gray. There are a couple of gray spots there. But anyway, a Gen Z influencer is really important. Do want people to be of the same crowd. And I think the millennial crowd, I can reach Gen Zers too, because there's just a basic youth component to all that. So I think we can get there. I think you just got to take the time. They're just starting to get rolled up into life. And I think that it's just about building in, training them, helping them to understand, encouraging them, maybe not so much training them, just encouraging them in what they're, and making it fun by working together.
Yeah. I hear you guys are wanting to get into the podcast world. You've been talking to Eddie, the Patriots Prayer Network here, and any news on that front?
Well, we're there. We're putting our capacity together. I've got a team that can help us get all that out. I have access to a lot of people that we can talk to. We're rounding those things up right now, and more to come. We're still thinking through. I just want to say I don't have anything conclusive, but got folks lined up on our end already, and we'll be ready to roll things out soon. It's really important thing to do, and people that gets to millennial and Gen Z, by the way, too, if you do it in the right way and make it interesting, because they sometimes have time for long form content when they're kind of pulling away from life a little. Driving on the road while they're working is another thing too. So we're on our way. More to come.
That's good to hear. And of course, Patriots Prayer Network is all about bringing in, especially something like Caucus that really
definitely
principles above. And there's been that big shift. This is something that I've always identified as I would never say that I'm and I'm damn sure not a Democrat. I say that I love this country, and I identify a lot because it's not like a government that entrenched and has been protecting itself and building itself up like the Republican Party has. So when the Epstein list and all really coming out and there's Republicans on there, good. send them to prison, get them out of there, get the RINOs out of there. We need to start getting patriots. And
correct.
when people say that, just there has to be a younger generation, that this movement isn't about Democrat or Republican. This isn't my team versus your team. This is for the good of the country. We're going to do everything in our power to kick these RINOs out and to start actually making changes for the betterment of the people, with representatives that actually represent the people. And like we mentioned earlier in the show, representatives accountable to what they say. This is why a lot of people are frustrated with what's going on. But I know that there's been a lot of work behind this with Doge that has been exposing, and it's kind of a lot of what we knew going on, but we didn't have proof. We didn't have anybody actually sifting through the paperwork and seeing what it is. So I enjoy the support that I'm seeing, whether, from any generation that is on this movement, rather than being the Republicans here in Washington State drive, because I just ran into the group last night here in state, and the first thing on his bio was a centrist Republican. And I was like, well, we're not going to win with that. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. A centrist Republican? What are you, like, the people in Washington, the Democrats in Washington are trying to put into the Washington state abortion up until birth, and to have gender affirming surgery at any age. They want that in the Constitution, and they want to completely strip the parents from any of their rights of knowing about it or consenting to it. And you can't be a centrist on that. You can't make peace with evil like that. There's no central area in there. It's either oppose them chopping off the genitals of your child without you knowing or consenting to it, or you agree with it. It's one or the other. So this movement, what I'm seeing is people not identifying as Republicans, and conservative is fine, but just it's separating that is ruling us for so long.
Well, and we should be constitutionalists. We should be looking at the Constitution to figure out, because there's no United States without the Constitution, guys. That's what formed the United States of America. We understand what that means and the beauty of having limited government. By the way, anyone that calls themselves a centrist Republican is someone that really wants Democrats to like them. That's really all that it is. And believe in bipartisanship. Both parties suck.
Yes,
I don't want either of them involved, right? And when you look at here's a little for your audience. I've been sharing a lot lately. Back in 2000 and 2001, and the Wall Street Journal, back when it used to be a decent newspaper, in 2012, I think it was, wrote an article. In 2000 and 2001, the Office of Management and Budget, remember, we were running surpluses some years during the Clinton administration. The Office of Management and Budget projected that we would pay off then $5.5 trillion national debt by 2013. Now think about that for a second. We were on track to totally pay off our national debt by 2013. So much so that when they were writing about it, they were all worried about 30-year bondholders. How are we going to pay them off early? We've made, we're going to have to pay how are we going to deal with that? Like, they were speculating. That's how serious they were. And here we in 2025 we're running at 37 trillion. We'll be at $39 trillion of debt already, running over $2 trillion deficits. Okay. So that's how far we've come. Who did that? Well, just keep in mind,
a lot of Obama.
George W. Bush was president, right?
Yeah.
For 8 years. Then Barack Obama was president for 8 years. George W. Bush did our national debt, and Obama doubled it even more. And we did add debt it was mostly related to COVID. And so let's just not forget who brought us in this place. And it was not Americans. And Donald Trump represents a pulling away from strict party adherence to more principle-based adherence, looking towards the Constitution and looking towards rationality. This is what the tariffs battle is all about, by the way. And again, I come from a libertarian free market Austrian economics perspective when I think of what we need to do in the economy. I don't believe in tariffs for tariffs' sake, but I can tell you this: when I hear Donald Trump talking about reciprocal tariffs, where we're looking at another country and saying, hey, you charge us that, well, we're going to do the same thing. That's the way the tariff system should be. Unilateral agreements between countries and having a fair exchange between each of them, where you don't have all the lobbyists having to determine what the tariffs are going to be. One number, make it reciprocal, and be done with it, or make it zero if you can. So there's a whole lot that parties have done to get us in this situation. And I don't want to be nonpartisan, because in this day and is Democrat, but we pretend like we're not Democrat. I just want to get away. I just want the parties to become, and I want the people to become more. And that's what Donald Trump has done. As well.
The America
get rid of the DEI.
That's right. By the way, FYI, anti-populist, people are talking about populism. Oh my gosh, populism is so dangerous. No, it's not. It's called democracy. It's called a Republican form of government where people vote for their representatives. Popular vote, folks. So we do want populism. We want the people to be the primary driver. Right there at the beginning of the Constitution. And its language, FYI. This isn't just the preamble where we say, this is what we're about to talk about. No, we're talking about it. It says, we the people, in order to form. And this is the basic concept of popular sovereignty. That word, anyone that's heard those words, it kind of rolls off the top of your head and you don't quite get it. What it is, the people are the king, not the elected officials, not the bureaucrats. It's the people. We need to assert that.
Yes, they are elected representatives of the people. And we've noticed, these couple of decades, the oligarchy and the RINOism plagued our country and our party. I know I'm America First, conservative constitutionalist. How do we go forward? How rid this country of RINOism?
Well, we've taken a first step in November. And part of that is, as we were just talking about, if we align ourselves with a party, we do so very loosely and only for the organizational benefit of gathering people together of a similar mindset to do something. But to marry ourselves to party and not to the Constitution, I think is a major short-sighted way to look at things. So the way we do that is to continue build upon the efforts that we already began last time around, where we say, we're not going to do what a politician tells me. We're going to look at what a politician says, and we either say yes. We either, in the old Emperor of Rome way, we either we do this or we do this.
Right,
and that's it. We've got to become activist citizens, not every day, all day long, but we need to pay attention to what's going on. That's our duty as citizens, is to be informed. That's one of the things we try to do at the Conservative Caucus, is inform people and let them know what's going on. So the second thing that we need to do, you do need to get involved at your local level. As many people possible should run for their school board and run for their city council. Listen, guys, politics, everyone who you see in Washington, D.C., good, bad, or indifferent, they somewhere like that. There are a few of them that ran for Congress the first time and made it. But the real effort to change things happens when you get involved at your local level. You do well there. You go through the battles that will come to you, and they inevitably will, just like on Capitol Hill they do. Right. And then successfully navigate those battles and your principles, and then move up to the next level. We need a bench of people to get involved in their local level. We need everybody during school board meetings, and this does not take a lot of effort. They need to go to their local school board and listen to what's being talked about and push back on bad ideas. Mm-hmm. I mean,
especially now that the FBI is not going after them.
Doesn't it? Yeah, exactly. And keep in mind of these people that you remember when Glenn became governor of Virginia, there was that big brouhaha in Loudoun County School Board. And that one man had come in and the police manhandled him to the floor and cuffed him and took him. We forget who that person was. His daughter had just been raped by a transgender guy in a girl's bathroom, and that school board was hiding it. How can these school boards hide it? It's when we're not involved. So school board meetings happen on an irregular basis, once a month typically. Get involved in that. Just take a look at what's happening there. And we do need to change our education system. So that's one very place start as well, too. And then beyond that, just pay attention to what's happening in Congress and go vote and tell your friends to vote. You help with a little voter registration. Call your friends and tell them what to do. Spend 2 hours a week doing that, and you could make a massive difference.
That's very, very true. And this is something that I really identify with the /Maha movement. It's not just the fact that your idea, like when Black Lives Matter was around, I mean, technically, I guess but everybody just changed their profile, clicked the donate button, and they were like,
Right.
I'm done. I did my good deed. You know, it's like, no, this is the time that we need in this world. And that means that every component of your life has to change for the better. You have to start figuring out what you're going to eat. You know what you're putting in your body every single day. You have to start figuring out where you're going to spend your money. Shopwithamerica.us, sign up there. Start supporting local family-owned American companies. I mean, that's the smallest start. Heather here says grassroots at the local level, trickle effect happens and snowballs up. This is the big difference that people, I think, have a hard time understanding, that know how far out that ripple effect is going to go when you start speaking out, when you actually those values, and you get married, and you're involved in their lives, and then you're involved in their school, and then you're involved with their teachers, and then you get into school board meetings. Once this starts to happen, and we really have a mission to start protecting our children and thinking not just for our immediate, what's in the political news today, but we start looking forward to the future. Okay, how is this going to affect my children 10 years down the road? What kind of future are they going to have if I stay silent, if keep eating pizza every night and just continue watching Netflix and just taking in this brain rot every night?
Yeah.
What is going to look like in 10 years for my child? What kind of effect could I have made? What difference could I have made if I start speaking up now? And that's what the entire MAGA movement, the Maha movement, this movement across the country, where people are getting inspired, where they're finding God, and they're answering the call to actually embody the values they wish to see in this world. And I'm loving that it's starting to happen, and that hopefully I can inspire as many people as possibly can to begin to do this. And it sounds like you guys have us over at the Conservative Caucus there.
Without a doubt. And by the way, let me put an even finer point on husbands. Love your wives, spend with them and cherish them. Husbands and wives, take care of your children, grow them up, teach them values, live it yourself, do the right thing yourself. Men, be faithful to your wives. Wives, be faithful to your husbands. Just decide to be a great family unit. John Locke, who is the kind of a fundamental intellectual part of this country, he noted treatise of government. He said that all government begins in the family, and that when we create governments among men, we're ceding a little bit of family authority to that government, but the real government starts in the family. And we need to understand that principle very well. I mean, I come from a Judeo-Christian perspective on this. Our whole idea and freedom mostly comes from the Judeo-Christian ethic. We have some input from ancient Athens and a little bit from ancient Rome, but it's really that Judeo-Christian ethic that goes all the way back to Moses that is the foundation for freedom, because property ownership goes back that far. The idea that you must justly, tipping the scales, moderate and adjudicate, that goes all the way that far back, amongst many things. And I mean, who wants to live in a country where the 10 Commandments is important, where you don't steal, where you don't lie in front of court? I mean, this it's so fundamental and simple. Right. It all does begin in the character of children. The moral character of their parents it happens when they are dedicated to that way of thinking in their families. And if you propagate that throughout society, it really makes things much better. This is why the LGBTQI plus thing is a real problem. Like, it's one thing to have a free society.
Why they targeted children. That they're the future.
Well, and it's one thing. It's one thing to say, listen, we're not rounding these people into concentration camps. I mean, no, I don't want to live in a society that does that. But I live in a society that says that's the most important thing. These are the relationships we must value. No, we have no need to value those relationships at a high level, and we need to value the family unit, because that's the only way that societies grow and thrive. They thrive out of the central family unit. No other way to do that in any society in all of human history.
And me and Maurice have talked about this exactly, probably numerous times in our podcast. It's almost like a boomerang effect going on right now, because they started first, they attacked God, then masculinity, femininity, the nuclear family, and then children. Now we're going in the reverse, where the men are taking back charge of their homes, protecting their wives, their children. And then once you get your foundation in the home correct, that's when you can go out and do your school board meetings or run for local office and branch that stuff out further. So that's why I really love like grassroots initiatives to kind of get mindset in this country that, you know, we can push this forward. I'm actually 501c4 called the RINO removal, and it's we have similar values on between us, and I would love to do further, but we're over time.
I'm glad to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, hey, when it's over, but
well, and by the way, I'm for Awesomeness Incorporated, which is a C3, and we're going to be making some huge waves here soon as well. So there's the traditional God, family, country. I mean, that's what we really need to be on, and that's things. It always seems to come back to this. No matter what we discuss, if your household is in chaos and you're living a sinful life, if you're living in sin, but you still call yourself a Christian, like I say that, I mean, this country is a Christian country. That's it. Is if we start embodying those values again. Now, I won't necessarily say that we have to forcibly. Well, let me think about this, because
forced proselytization, is that basically what you're saying?
We have to figure out a way to restore our faith in Jesus Christ in this country.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, we will collapse.
No doubt about it.
I mean, we have to restore marriage, because Steve is exactly right. How they attacked that allowed the feminist movement to come about, and that destroyed femininity in almost every way. And then after the children, once the fathers were removed from the homes. So in all reality, I talk about feminism a lot on X page, and I blame it for a lot, but I don't blame, because I see it as a failure of leadership from men. Yeah. I see it as a failure of leadership by the men to lead their wives and to lead their families. I'm the head of my spouse in my household. I'm not the head of the household. Your taxes. I'm the head of I'm her leader. I am her protector. I will do anything and everything for that woman. I serve her daily, and she serves me daily. But I'm the leader when it comes down to it. And if we fail to values, then we will continue to go the road of the nuclear family being destroyed because of the failure of men of the households. If we continue eating, if we continue not honoring God, if we continue separating ourselves from what made this country so great, from what made this country different and unique from every society before it that we have in known human history, then we will collapse, and it will be just an absolute waste of an opportunity, because we have the opportunity now to start turning this thing around. And I hope we can inspire some young people in here, and you know what, it really doesn't matter what age always time to be saved. There's always time to seek Jesus Christ, and there's time. We can do this, and I'm very optimistic future. Jim, I do want to thank for joining us. On the forward to talking to you more and working with you more. You know, with Patriots Prayer Network. You know, we're going to have some up here soon, but great having you on today. We have over 11,000 viewers live. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Please share this podcast, and check out our Rumble channel at Patriots Prayer. We had a big interview with Tom McDonald yesterday. More coming up in the future. Huge things coming up in the future. So,
yes, sir.
Jim, is there anything you want to promote or say before we get out of here?
Sure. I just want to encourage people. First of all, let me just very briefly say about a husband. Your number one job is to care for your wife's heart, even in your business, even in everything you do. That's the most important thing. If you start there, you can be successful. Of course, a woman needs to also do her part. Ephesians 5:25 says, husbands, love your wives, but wives, respect your husbands. It's a two-way street. We need to be doing that. So marriage and family is huge. And we stand for that. We stand for the Judeo-Christian ethic at Conservative Caucus. We believe exactly what you said. We totally 100% agree with what you just mentioned. Now, if people would like to find out more, they can go to theconservativecaucus.org. That's THE, conservativecaucus.org. And they can also follow me at Jim Pfaff on X, and of course our organization is at TC Caucus on X as well too. We'll train you and show you how to be a good grassroots leader if that's what you're interested in. But we've got a lot of great information there that can help you understand what our country is about and how you can be involved at whatever level you're capable of doing. So theconservativecaucus.org.
Beautiful, beautiful. Steve, is there anything you want to say before we get out of here?
And I don't know. We talked about a lot. I felt like we could have gone on, but there's just so much we need to talk. And really, I think we have a lot that we need to do. We need to act. This is the time right now where we need to put our big boy pants on and let's get to work, because we have a country to save and we only have a few years to do it. So we need to do it now, and we need to do it for our future. So this is the time.
Beautiful, man. And you know, one of the reasons why we're cutting this podcast short, because I both work all day, and then we have, this podcast, we only have a little bit of time for wifing. So part of the reason, you guys, like, I could talk to Jim here, and Steve for 3 hours, but we have to husbands and fathers and fulfill our duties in our households as well. So I appreciate you guys coming on, watching this, commenting. The chat was lighting up tonight. I'm sorry we didn't get to a lot of you guys, but please share this podcast. We'll be back Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. in the Great of Texas, whatever time it is there.
Got it. 8. 9.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Take care, you guys. God bless. We'll see you next time.
Peace.